Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is another Raphael Podcast production. This segment is called Buffalo Bullish, and it's on economics and finance. Joining me today for this segment is a very familiar face. You all know him, my mentor, Dr. Curtis Haynes, professor of economics at Buffalo State University. Doc, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for that introduction, man. We doing good, man. We doing good. Thanks. This is a beautiful spot you got going on here.
Yeah, shout out to
Hey, what podcast we doing right now?
Buffalo Bullish.
Buffalo Bullish. We bullish on Buffalo?
We are bullish on Buffalo.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yes,
I love it. It took me a while to get bullish on Buffalo. I've been here a long time, but when I
30 years?
Yeah, 30 years. But when I first came to Buffalo, I had, I don't know, you Buffalonian, so you probably, maybe you hear it, you know this or not, right? But from our perspective, people go through Buffalo, nobody stays in Buffalo.
And a lot of us leave.
Yeah.
But we come back. We always come back.
Yeah, I saw that definitely in after the turn of the millennium, 2000 on, because I first came here in Buffalo in the 90s, and in the 90s, Buffalo was feeling the symptoms of being a Rust Belt city, and I see that there's some healing going on in the city. So thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for coming.
Okay.
So your field of expertise at Buffalo State University is Black political economy. Let's tell the people what Black political economy is, because I'm a proud member of the Academy, CIGbuffalo.com, and it took me a little while to grasp the idea of what Black political economy is and what exactly you were sharing with the world.
Okay. Well, at Buffalo State College, actually, that is not my field. My field at Buffalo State College is economics, and I teach microeconomics, and I do a little bit, actually more than a little bit. I do personal finance. But my training and where my heart is, and what really helped me develop my skill set in economics and in personal finance, was my study of Black Americans in the United States from an economic perspective, and that was a Black political economy. So it's the application of political economic analysis as applied to understanding a population of people that are either we consider ourselves as Black Americans, or African Americans, or Black, or people consider us that. And so there's this population. W.E.B. Du Bois called this population of people a artificially created population. They were artificially created because they were the descendants of free people on the African continent who were brought to the Americas through the Middle Passage through the holds of ships. But when they were on the African continent, they were thousands of different ethnic groups that were susceptible to being enslaved. They didn't have the weapons of war, for example, and those people who had all these different ethnic groups, different cultures, different ways of interacting, in the holds of the Middle Passage, in those slave ships, they all became one. Right? And W.B. Du Bois would call them an artificially created population. And then my writing partner, Jessica Gordon Nemhard, she introduced me to the term called subaltern. Right? So Black Americans are a subaltern population, meaning that they're part of the broader U.S. population. U.S. population, I think, is about 340, 350 million people, and Black Americans are about 40 million people as a percentage of that broader U.S. population. So we have some of the characteristics of the broad U.S. population, but there's some very unique circumstances associated with the communities throughout the United States.
Yeah, so I'd love to give a special shout out to Dr. Jessica Gordon Nemhard, who I had the honor and privilege of podcasting with in San Antonio for an economics conference that we went to as the Academy and CIG. You mentioned W.E.B. Du Bois, and what I learned with the podcast with Jessica is, and I don't want to get this wrong, but I believe she's W.E.B. Du Bois's goddaughter.
No, not that close.
I heard that wrong.
But
Okay.
but what you did hear was you heard the love, right? But W.E.B. Du Bois was her father's mentor.
Okay, mentor, yes.
Right. Yeah. And that's
heavy.
That's heavy in
That's
and of
heavy.
itself.
Yes.
And her father is what? He was 100, about to be 103.
Still alive, yes.
Still alive.
Correct.
Yeah.
So W.E.B. Du Bois was really influential to you and your work, clearly, but I've been hearing a name more often than his, in Lloyd Hogan.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So W.E.B. Du Bois he's probably one of the greatest intellectuals in the 20th century. Some people would say that he's one of the greatest black intellectuals, but I would say probably one of the greatest intellectuals. And as an intellectual, he's people claim him, right? Particularly in sociology, people in sociology claim him. But he was an artist. He wrote novels, right? He wrote all sorts of stuff. But what I did with regard to W.E.B. Du Bois, I pulled out his work in the area of economics, particularly cooperative economics. And he was a proponent of what was called the cooperative commonwealth. And so I worked on that in my dissertation, and that's kind of what I'm doing right now in terms of my applied research, in terms of my relationship with you. As a matter of fact, we are both owners of a company, a real estate holding and management cooperative that's one part of our version of a cooperative commonwealth. So that's W.E.B. Du Bois. Lloyd Hogan is probably my intellectual mentor. He committed, from my perspective, he committed academic suicide by making a decision to study the black condition in what he saw and what I see is in a socially scientific way. And why it was academic suicide is because mainstream economics, and even today, is pretty much dominated by a branch of economics called neoclassical economics. And generally, if you go to any college or university in the United States or good parts of the Western world, neoclassical economics is built around this idea of profit maximization, cost minimization, rational.
Keynesian falls under that.
No, well, Keynesian is a spin-off of that, but classical economics, this kind of economics, is what dominates academia. But what's significant about it is the insignificance of recognizing the significance of race. Right? So you could study, if you could be an economics major, study economics for 4 years, or even all the way up to the level of a PhD, and not really have a solid introduction to what's really happening in the United States in race relations.
Yeah, I did want to ask you that. So we know the significance of race on economics in our country, but how significant is race in economics globally?
Okay. Well, I think to say that we know, actually, I would say, being brought onto this podcast, I don't think we know enough. Mm-hmm. I think we spend a lot of time on discrimination, a lot of time on racism, a lot of time on differences, but probably the most important thing to recognize from the perspective of an economist. So I would recognize that I got a lane. My lane is economics. My lane is economic and financial literacy. But in that lane, probably one of the most important things to recognize is this relationship between generational wealth and generational poverty. And what black political economy does, it really lays out the consequence, the wealth consequence in both human being as a form of wealth, in life wealth, and material wealth as a result of at one point being free on the African continent, being susceptible without their own, resistance all the way, but free men and women and families being enslaved and their labor being exploited 100% for hundreds of years, finding their own freedom with help of others, just to be put in another form of bondage called sharecropping for almost 100 years, and then freeing themselves with helps of others from this sharecropping environment, which we call the civil rights movement, to enter into a wage labor system, separate and unequal, and with all sorts of roadblocks with regards to becoming owners of capital or owners of high level industry.
So you've been teaching this for 30 years, so I'm sure that we could talk infinitely time-wise and depth-wise on the subject. I want to talk a little bit about San Antonio real quick, the ASSA conference.
Yeah.
What was that conference that you took us all to, and what was your role at that conference this year?
All right, so we went to the National ASSA conference, which is the National International Conference. So what you saw, there was thousands of economists in San Antonio over that weekend. My role was that I was participating in the national. So the ASSA is an umbrella organization. The work that I did and that I participated in a panel discussion was on cooperative economics that was sponsored by the National Economic Association, a subsection of the ASSA.
What does ASSA stand for, and who are your co-panelists?
Okay, well, so the ASA, Allied Social Science Association, right? My co-panelist was Dr. James Stewart, Dr. Jessica Gordon-Nemhard, and Dr. Nina Banks. And what was pretty amazing about that was that all of us have studied cooperative economics over the last 30 years. And this was like the first time we were all together in one panel talking about that history, particularly with Dr. James Stewart writing a seminal piece in 1984. We discussed that and talking about in terms of what I did, I talked about the relationship between economic theory, economic policy, and economic practices, using Black political economy as the economic theory that I am motivated and inspired by, cooperative economic policy associated with that theory, also inspired by recognizing that the solutions to not just Black Americans, but probably if we like take a broad stroke with this, what's happening, it's very evident post-pandemic, is that the world is not following the same rules of the 20th century. There's a paradigm shift right now in the language of Black political economy, cooperative economic policy, and what you and I are participating in this community building stuff, I believe is the language of the 21st century. And you asked me like what might be my shout out here is that this is our gift. This is our gift to the world. Right? It was the result of a very serious study of the socioeconomic conditions of Black Americans and understanding where the poverty came from. And now not only do we understand where the poverty comes from, but we also now understand where wealth and abundance can come from for all people around the world.
So I know this much about what it is that you teach. You've been doing it for so long, and I've only really studied it under you. But what we're really here, not really here to discuss, but in Buffalo Bullish, a focus of what's to come that's a part of the significance of Black political economy and changing the world, as you say, is this creation of this new technology called Bitcoin. Okay. Can you talk a little bit about what Bitcoin is, and that's really deep to get into blockchain technology and the underlying of Bitcoin and what it's built on. But just how does Bitcoin relate to Black political economy as you see it, and how it could be beneficial to the world?
So, I want to preface the conversation with Bitcoin in recognizing that Bitcoin is a form of money, right? It's a monetary technology. It's a saving technology, and it's hot right now.
47,000 today.
It's 47,000. It was 15,000 about a year ago, right? And it's hot on the ears. It became significant to Wall Street just recently when they just established like about 11 exchange traded funds, with Blackstone being the largest of the Blackstone, Fidelity, Arc, all these companies, these financial management companies.
Arcus, Kathy Woods.
Kathy Woods,
and
right?
Blackstone Sailor.
No, Larry Fink.
Okay.
Yeah. BlackRock, right? Now, one thing about that. So just recently, those ETFs just started. Probably what was it, like mid January? So it's been less than a month, and the Pied Piper of Bitcoin in terms of the companies that are bought and sold on the New York Stock Exchange was Michael Saylor and his MicroStrategies. But just today,
MicroStrategies, right?
MicroStrategies. But just today, or maybe it was yesterday, the combined purchases of those ETFs are greater than the quantity of ownership of Bitcoin that Michael Saylor started. Right? So I think it was like 190,000, something like that. That's huge. But going back to my caveat here is that there's a lot of attention on Bitcoin, but it's just a piece of a from my perspective as an economist, it's just a piece of what an economy needs. Right. So my work, I do economic and financial literacy. So just to break it down, political economy is about people, right? It's about populations of people, groups of people, and just how people like socially reproduce themselves. And economics is about food, right? And how people in different economic systems throughout
secure their daily
bread from our ancestors, our hunter-gatherer ancestors, communal ancestors, all the way today. And so one of the things that Lloyd Hogan created, or he introduced, is this idea of institutional mechanisms of social reproduction, meaning that there's, that for this whole society, us here in this room, production and distribution of goods and services, his language is institutional mechanisms of social reproduction. My work, I would consider myself a micro-political economist, and from that perspective, I look at looking specifically at the household and the human being. We talked about human energy. I focus on human energy, and the human energy is human beings are the outcome, the manifestation of this human energy, and it's malleable. It could be shaped. We're like clay, and so for me, what Bitcoin is just a potential form of money that could be a new form of medium of exchange and a store of value, store of wealth that's more associated with a economic system of the future than it would be associated with the economics of the past. So I just want to make sure that people understand when I do talk about Bitcoin, I'm not saying Bitcoin is a salvation. Bitcoin is just one tool in salvation. The bettering of human beings, right? The human perfectibility, that's the salvation. That's where my work lies, is that Black political economy makes that revolutionary transition from focusing on goods and services, stuff that's produced, the material around us, to focusing on human beings. And that's the revolutionary part. That being taken care of, you do need an economic system. Like, for example, you and I, we could practice barter, right? I got something, you have something, but for that trade to take place, we have to have what's called double coincidence of wants, right? You got to want what I want, I got to want what you want, and that style of interacting, for human beings interacting, it's hard to get traction and generate scale. And we got 8 billion people on the planet, right? So you need a form of money as a medium of exchange, as a store of value, and also as a unit of account. And so historically, money has taken the form of like seashells as tokens, right? As collectibles, right? I got some seashells, they're real cute, right? And you live in another village, right? Maybe I'll share you some of those seashells. The seashells are you like them, right? But you could come back and we could trade those shells, right? And they have value, right? And then maybe we could trade animals, or but the thing about that kind of money, that primitive form of money, is that it doesn't hold value over time necessarily, or across space. And then we moved on to like metals as a form of money, like copper, silver, gold. Then we moved on to paper money, like what we have here in the United States, what people call fiat money. And now there's this new form of money that started in I believe in 2009 by this pseudonymous person or group of people called
Satoshi Nakamoto,
right? And so I kind of feel like that's just like we're gifting Black political economy and the concepts to the world based on the study of Black Americans. I believe that Satoshi Nakamoto gifted this concept of this open source monetary saving system that is decentralized and really can't be controlled by any human being. And it's programmed. It has this perfectly inelastic, meaning that there's only 21 million of them that could ever be produced, and everybody, whether you're in the Sudan or whether you're in Buffalo, New York, could purchase it if you have access to a phone. And when I say purchase it as a form of money that could facilitate transactions or could operate as a store of value. But for me, Bitcoin could be I'm not even going to say could be. It's like, I'm making it happen, right? I'm making it happen.
It is.
I'm one of the players, right? I first got into Bitcoin from speculation. It's like I heard about it. The first time I heard about it, I was thinking of like Bengal bucks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something,
Campus money.
Your campus money, and so I wasn't really paying attention. I didn't start paying attention almost the same time that Michael Saylor started paying attention, which was in 2020. And I realized, wait a second, this is a very interesting asset. But just recently, I'm paying attention to it as an economist. That this really, those of us here in the West, I can't remember the author's name, but I was just recently reading an audio of a book called "Check Your Financial Privilege." And so when I first got involved in Bitcoin, my financial privilege was not checked, meaning that I was looking at it as speculation, buy low, sell high. I was looking to make some money off of it. Didn't know too much about it, except that it was talked about as being a form of money. But what we here in the United States and the West do not understand is that most people around the world need and want dollars, right?
USD.
USD. And so we're very privileged that we are in a economic environment, in a financial environment that our central bank can create at a whim or at their will as many dollars as the government might want. The spigot is perfectly elastic. All this quantitative easing that was taking place is just the ability to where you and I can't we can't counterfeit. We go to jail, right? But they're able to just create the dollars out of nothing. And so it's what's called a fiat currency, and
by decree.
And there's about 180 countries that use fiat currency. Like just about every country in the world use fiat currency. But out of those 180, only about 5 of those currencies are wanted around the world. Like the U.S. dollar, the yuan, right? The yen, the euro, maybe Canadian dollar, right? But nobody wants Zimbabwean dollars. Nobody wants Argentinian dollars, right? So there's all this fiat currency. So we're in a situation where we have fiat currency. We have a printing press that does not stop, but people want our money. That's not true for the majority of people on the planet, right? So we have this huge financial privilege that we're not aware of. I mean, it's almost, some people would call it a form of monetary imperialism, right? Monetary colonialism that people around the world are put into the situation that their money is weak, but our money is stronger, even though it's getting weaker. I mean, we just look around, the inflation that's around us is our money's getting weaker right now, but our inflation rate that initially before the pandemic might have been about 7%, now it's like about 20-something%, is nothing like a lot of third world countries where it's 100% or 200% or even 1,000%. We're not in that situation. So what Bitcoin does is that it's a form of money that's not controlled by anybody, but it's accessible to everybody who has a phone or who has access to apps on a phone. And I think that for me, in terms of what we could do into the future, democratizing or getting rid of the politics and getting rid of the role of military power in relationship to making your wealth or your money strong. It's two things. It's just amazing, right? I mean, it's just amazing, but it does have a potential, from my perspective, to change things. And I'm not just saying in an intellectual sense, because the truth is, it's changed things in my life on a very real level. There's this thing called I think it's called the cotillion effect. And the cotillion effect is those closest to the creation of money get most of the wealth, right? So those closest to the central banks, those close to the banks, the first round of banks, those closest to the government, the politicians, when that money spigot comes out and the money comes into the community, they get the first, before the money gets weak, they get the first round of the money. The people that you see who are pushing shopping carts around here, they're furthest away from the money. So now there's this, they call it the Satoshi effect or the Nakamoto effect, that those closest to really understanding what Bitcoin is, they're going to get the money. But the beauty of it is that, so like BlackRock is just, I don't know, they got billions of dollars in Bitcoin now, but they can't monopolize it. That's what's beautiful. Yeah, they're going to make a lot of money. They're going to make a lot of wealth, which is, all right, I mean, it is capitalism right now, right? But they're making wealth. It doesn't stop me from making wealth. Whereas in the old system, people who monopolized the money meant that I didn't have any money, right? But with this use of Bitcoin, the ability for the very powerful state, private sector, to put their thumb on the scale of justice or the scale or the weight of the money, right? It's not there, and that's really important. So yeah.
Thank you, Doctor. So we fear what we don't understand. My goal in creating this segment, Buffalo Bullish, is to create a better understanding of what Bitcoin is, to get rid of some of the reservation and allow for a space where our people, the viewers of this podcast, can capitalize off of their knowledge and be, like as you said, close to the money. What you can expect from this segment is money talk, all the way from bartering shells through the gold standard to fiat and beyond to what I believe is the new money. So please join us in future conversations. I have the honor and privilege of being pretty much best friends with, when this is all said and done, I'm sure the world will look at Dr. Curtis Haynes as one of the most brilliant economists on the planet. And I've truly enjoyed every moment of learning with you and underneath you. So thanks for tuning in. Dr. Haynes, thanks for joining me. Tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, about to say, let me get this shout out, right? So Buffalo, New York, shout out to the city of Buffalo. They reminded me that I'm a Buffalonian by choice, and at first it just happened, but now I definitely am a Buffalonian by choice. So shout out to the city of Buffalo, the Buffalo Bull, right? You could in terms of social media, you could get in contact with me and my organization or our organization at cigbuffalo.com, cigbuffalo.com, and you could get us at the right there. You could get us at cigbuffalo@gmail.com, and or our phone number is 716-390-0572. What we are looking to do. So please check us out at our website. Check out some of our YouTube station presence. Subscribe. We want to dominate the area in social media called Black Political Economy. So if you search Black Political Economy, we want you to be coming to us. Also, paradigm shift. We're talking about a paradigm shift, a shift from economics of scarcity that had been given to us for the last 300-400 years, maybe last 2,000 years, to economics of abundance, which is what we are looking towards in our present and into the future. cigbuffalo.com. Check us out.
Thanks for tuning in. That's Raphael Podcasts, and this was Buffalo Bullish. Peace. All right. So, Doc, you mentioned cooperative economics. What exactly is cooperative economics?
Okay, so cooperative economics, probably the best way for our viewing audience to understand cooperative economics is looking at our political system, rather, right? So in our political system, we have it's the idea of one person, one vote. We have a Republican Party, Democratic Party, and they vote on the city level, on the county level, on the state level, and on the federal level. And so those votes are designed as a form of decentralized control in a political system, right? So our political representatives, they supposed to speak to their constituents, and then the constituents will vote for the persons or the group of people that best represent their interests. So that's the political system. So cooperative economics is a form of using that same form of representation, the cooperative, the democratic representation of one person, one vote inside a company, inside what Du Bois was talking about, this concept of the cooperative commonwealth. So inside an economic system, whether it's the consumer goods, whether it's workers, you could build. Probably the system that's the most well known is the Mondragon system in Mondragon, Spain. Mondragon means dragon mountain, and it was formed in the Basque lands of Spain with Father Jose Arzamendi, who was a priest in this village. Started with a few of his students, probably I think it was about 12 students. They started an industrial. I think they're making lanterns. But right now it has like over 150,000 cooperative owners, one person, one vote, and it's a multi-billion-dollar business. And a lot of people call it an experiment, and people say that it can't be created anywhere else. But we're experimenting with it here, our own version of the cooperative commonwealth. But the significance of this is we juxtapose it against a traditional business, capitalist business that has shares, a C corporation. C corporations is one person, not one person, but it's one stock, one vote. So if you have a company, you could have 3 million shares of stock, you get 3 million votes. If I have 10 shares, I get 10 votes, right? So clearly the capital has more weight and more power. But from my perspective, right, capital is not always the smartest entity in the room. They have a lot of self-interest, and it's not clear that they're the smartest, but they have the most power. So what we're doing, like we have capitalists in our organization, excuse me, but the difference in terms of the capitalists in our organization, they are looking to a return on investment on their capital, but whether they put in $1 million or $50, depending on how that business is organized, still one person. You put in $1 million, you just get one vote. I put in whatever the minimum is, let's say 1,000, I get one vote. Because we recognize that, especially the significance in the black community. That's where all this came around, is that in the black community, my bias is that we need to learn how to be owners. So right now, you and I are part of this cooperative, Mondragon Village Association. That's a real estate holding cooperative. There's 9 of us involved in this.
I Own Fuck Fear LLC.
Yeah. But the idea is that our goal, we want to make money, we want to make profits, we want to. I mean, we're in the richest country in the world, right? We should be able to get a piece of this, right? But the idea of the cooperative is let's organize and build an economic system that teaches more people how to become owners, right? So instead of me, Dr. Curtis Haynes Jr., learning how to be an owner, and you guys just hanging out with me, it's like, no, let all 9 of us learn how to be owners. Let all 9 of us learn how to be investors. Let all 9 of us learn how to be owners. Let all 9 of us learn how to be managers and developers. And when I say 9, this is just the beginning. Just to let the audience know. That's why you need to check us out, right? This is in alignment all the way from the halls of academia in terms of economic theory, government policy in terms of cooperative economic policy, and in the streets of Buffalo. But this business model is very attractive, not just to Black Americans, but young people in general. Everybody wants a piece of the pie. And, you know, the 1% has squeezed us out for too long. This is a chance for us to learn how to be owners. And being owners is not for the light of heart, as you know, right? But to learn how to do it among a team, among a group, practicing the art of masterminding, right? Where, you know, we bring all our minds together to create a better understanding of what we want to learn, which is financial freedom. Financial freedom as a part of a general freedom that is spiritual, emotional, mental, physical, and financial, right? That's the idea of the cooperative. But what's significant, coming back to economics, is the idea of decentralized control, centralized management, decentralized control built off of the democratic process of one person, one vote, as compared to the capitalist business model, where it's one share of stock, one vote. And capital has an undue weight on policy.
Folks, you hear it. This is economics on the highest level. This is cutting edge economics, where we're pushing the frontier, we're shifting paradigms.
Yes.
CIGbuffalo.com. This is, again, economics on the highest level coming out of Buffalo, New York.
I agree.
Buffalo, New York has always played a significant role, from my opinion, on the world, globally, in arts, academia, food, of course, all of these different fronts.
Yeah, 100 years ago, more millionaires per capita lived in Buffalo than anywhere else in the United States.
And that's not a statistic that should be taken for granted or taken lightly. So make a conscious investment with us. Invest your time, invest some money into the collective. We want to bring money into the community and keep that money in the community. So CIGbuffalo.com, and CIG stands for the Conscious Investment Group. Doc, real quick, how'd you come up with that name, the Conscious Investment Group?
I'm not sure how it came. It was probably came through inspiration. It probably came as the result of many years of trying to figure out when I looked at my communities I lived in, when I look at community, like Buffalo is one of the most segregated cities in the country. When I look at that level of segregation, and when I see the level of poverty on one side part of the city as compared to the suburbs of the city like Williamsville and Clarence, right? It's like there's something wrong here, right? And then when I'm looking at the solution is not just throwing more money or making more money. The solution is consciousness. The solution is aligning ourselves with a greater consciousness. Like, for example, we talked about how big is your we?
My biggest.
Yeah, how big is your
bleep,
we?
bleep.
Right, bleep, bleep, bleep. But, right, a lot of people laugh at that. But what that actually means is, right, who do you call we, right? Who is your brother, your sister? Is your neighborhood and who you call family, does it just stop off of Grape Street, right? Is that where it stops? Does it just stop on the east side? Does it just stop in Buffalo? Does it just stop in Western New York? Does it just stop in the United States? Or can you walk the planet and perceive yourself as a human being as part of 8 billion people? That my we is 8 billion people, right? There's people in Sudan that I see myself in, right? And and I feel that we should, the closer we get to recognizing that I am you, you are me, right? That we are all human beings. We are all God's children, however we understand God, right? But we're all family. Like the old days, when the villages were 50 people, it doesn't, just because it's not 50 people anymore, it doesn't mean that the ideas didn't work. How big is your family? How big is your community? So that's that. So the idea of consciousness was in part that, and then investing in consciousness. I'm a philosopher. I spend a lot of time investing in consciousness.
Okay, Doc, thank you for joining me again. Thank you for tuning in. That's CIGbuffalo.com, the Academy, fuckfear.com, Raphael Podcast, and that's a wrap. Woo. Woo. Thanks for tuning in. That's been another episode of Raphael Podcast. You can find more episodes on fuckfear.com. Please like, comment, subscribe to YouTube. And for exclusive content, join my Patreon community at patreon.com/Raphael.